Okay, so let's look at the sprite. Yeah, and you guys can move back to wherever you want, obviously. Let's look at the sprite data thing for a moment. So let me just start an let's see. Let me just open up this old project from before that doesn't really have anything in it. So let's, if I have a sprite, okay, and obviously we can create them here. Uh, Sprites by default have a couple of variables that are attached to them. Uh, they all have velocity, position, potentially also acceleration. Um, and they have, they could be of a kind, they can have graphics to go with them. But what I was mentioning about this idea of scope is um, we have here the letter X, right, to represent the X coordinate, or Vx to represent the velocity. Um, every sprite has its own Vx and X and Vy and Y and so on. And so when we talk about like a formula that uses Vx or Vy, what it's not really just X, it's my sprite's Vx or this other sprite's X or whatever, right? Um, and so uh, X as a number is tied to a specific sprite. And if you want to use that specific number, you not only have to say that it's X that you want, but which X. Okay. Um, Now, the default variables here for the sprites are going to be the position, the velocity, the acceleration, the kind, the graphics, those sorts of things. Okay. Um, but if we go over here to the variables and we make a variable, just whatever, okay, this is not tied to a specific sprite. It's global to all of them. Okay. So here you would use this for stuff like um, either a variable you define, or of course there's a couple of them that are sort of predefined, like life and score and whatnot. Um, okay, so those are predefined, but they're still global. Um, and of course, you can define as many variables as you want. They can be whatever you want them to be, uh, but they're not tied to a specific sprite. Okay, so in vanilla MakeCode, there's no way to create a variable that's tied to a specific sprite unless we add in an extension, okay? And that extension is the arcade sprite data. Okay, and so let's look at that real quick and see what that adds for us. Okay. So it doesn't add a colored category, but if we go into sprites and we look down here towards the bottom, then there's a whole little extra block of stuff that that is now accessible, all for specific data um, that's attached to the sprite. Okay, so um, then item here would be the name of the sprite that we're attaching this data to. And then the thing that would go in quotes here is the name of that piece of data. So obviously it can't be X or Y or something because we've already used those, but it could be like sprite health or enemy health or something like that. And then each enemy could have its own unique amount of health. Um, and you'll notice that there's a whole bunch of them, but they kind of all look like um, they're kind of all duplicates of each other. So what's the difference really between all of them here? Right? So we've got sprite, Boolean, string, number, image, um, right? The difference is the data type. So the probably the most common two that you're going to be using would be number or perhaps Boolean. Okay. And uh, So so what's the difference between a number and a Boolean? I guess let's start there. I mean, a number is obvious what that is, right? So what's a Boolean? Yeah, it's a thing that can only be true or false. Okay, and notice that those, of course, have the little pointy sides, which visually tells you that you're dealing with a Boolean, and then the dudes that are pointy, of course, plop into any place that you have a Boolean evaluator. So loop, so a while statement or an if-then kind of construct. You can, of course, make compound Boolean statements, right? So you can do A and B by combining two other Booleans, and so you've got all of those logical operations there, or checking numbers or whatever. So, okay, so we've got here the data that we can attach to specific sprites. Okay, so if we, for example, wanted to make it so that every enemy had like 5 health, then when we spawn it, we'd set its particular value of the health variable to 5 or whatever. And then on the overlap, when we shoot it, okay, remember that the overlap here, other sprite, this other sprite, the like, let's say I shoot a particular enemy. Well, that's going to tell me which enemy my projectile is touching. And then by combining that with the dudes down here, I can say deduct 1 from its health. If its health is 0, then destroy it, and so on, right? Okay, so I've got all of those abilities. Okay, so it's mildly annoying that it's um, an extension rather than being already ready to go, but not the end of the world. Okay, so let's just actually, let me go back to an actual project that has stuff in it, just for the sake of demonstrating this. So let's just go to view all, and oh, okay, that's not what I want. There we go. No. Okay, if you would open, that'd be fantastic. Okay, it doesn't like me this morning. It's okay. Okay, so let's just do one of those. So let's go to advanced. Let's add back in that extension. Okay, and let's do something where we are attaching health to the enemy. Okay, just for sake of demonstration. So let me stop that so it doesn't keep going. Okay, so under sprites, right, what we need to do is we need to create set. In this case, we want a number. Okay, and I'll just set it to 5. Okay, so enemy health. Let me actually make it a single word there. We'll set it to 5. Now every enemy is going to have that 5. But then we also need to come over here and do deal with the projectile and the and when the player touches the enemy. Okay, so let's modify this. And so what should we do if the player touches an enemy? Or sorry, shoots an enemy. Yeah, subtract one of the enemy's health. Okay, and if we'll put the condition here, if the enemy's health is 1, then we also need to, well, okay, we can do this in a couple of ways. Let me do it this way. Let's do this. So we'll put this inside, okay, and we'll say change other sprite enemy health. Oops, it's auto-correcting by -1. Okay, and then what's the condition here that we want to set on for destruction? So right now it's if true. That's always going to happen. We don't want that. So what do we want? When should the thing die? When the health is equal to 0, right? Okay, so then under sprites, we need to use the item data as number. Okay, so you see the difference between the thing that's got a roundies versus the other ones that are kind of blocky. So the blocky ones actually do something. The roundy things are if you want to use that value as part of another block. Okay, so in this case, we just want to say, what is the enemy's health? Okay, so I need this one, okay, and we'll doctor it up here in a little bit. And then the other thing I need is because I'm going to need to compare this number to 0, right? So I'm going to plop that guy in the first spot and then put the whole little dude there, right? So now it's not item, but rather, and you see how it's got that little exclamation mark, right? What should be here? It should be other sprite. Okay, does that make sense? And then which variable from other sprite do we want to look at? The enemy health one. Okay, and so no matter what, when we shoot something, we're going to deduct 1 from its health. Okay, great. And we'll do that immediately. And then if the health is 0, we know it's dead, and so we should do the destruction stuff that we already had from before. Okay, so does that make sense?
Where did you pull the other sprite?
Oh, yeah, so, okay. It's not over here. You have to drag it from this little spot on the overlap, yeah. Which is a little annoying, but I can see why they maybe did it that way. And if you'll notice, it's maybe a little hard to see on the screen, but you notice that the two reds here are slightly different shades. I think they've done that deliberately to kind of color code what you're doing in each place. But yeah. Okay, so does that kind of make sense? All right, so let's test it real quick and make sure it works. Um, to initialize the enemy health to a particular number. So I'll just change it actually to 3 here for the sake of demonstration. And I'll also change it so that the enemies spawn every 5 seconds just so I'm not overwhelmed. Yeah, so I have to initialize the thing, and I have to do that after the enemy is actually spawned into existence, right? It doesn't make sense to try and attach a variable to something that doesn't yet exist. Is that okay?
Are we using
My enemy, yes, okay. So, yeah, fair question. So, my enemy is the name of the sprite. And it, strictly speaking, there are lots of my enemies, right? So that's kind of like a placeholder in a sense. The other sprite here, when the game code actually runs, what it's going to do is it's going to, like, anytime you have other sprite in your code, you can only do that within a block that has another sprite definer. Okay, And then what the game's going to do is say, okay, well, which other sprite did you run into? And everywhere you see other sprite, it's going to replace that with a reference to the specific sprite that you actually overlapped with. So think of other sprite and sprite as placeholders for um, for who you've run into. So it'd be kind of like let's say that you were working at a restaurant, right? And you wanted to train the front of house staff. Okay, so if customer walks in, seat customer at open table. Well, but the first customer that comes in, you're going to say, okay, this is my customer, and I'm going to go seat them. But that's a different customer than, say, the next party of four that comes in. I mean, this is not the best example, but you're using customer or party as sort of a placeholder there to represent any one of the specific ones that actually come through the door. So it's kind of like that, I guess. Is that okay? Yeah. Um, yeah. And so you can only use Sprite and other Sprite, those sort of placeholders, within a block like the overlap block that sort of has them ready to go. And where you get them, to your question from a minute ago, is you just click on the Sprite or other Sprite and drag it to where you need it. Um, so, yeah. Okay, good. Okay, so let's test this thing out, see if it works. Hopefully it does. Okay, so why did the thing just get insta-killed? The enemy. Oops. Oops. Okay. Well, that didn't work.
We have to set the health on start instead of just every update.
Um.
Because I have the same problem with
Oh, yes. Okay. Okay. So I see why this is happening. Um. I think. Well, let's see. So okay. Let me actually add. Let me move this out of the way, and let me add here. Um. So I'm going to add in something to help me test. And so what I'm going to do is, I'm going to have it say when I shoot it. So hopefully this will work. Oops, would help if I could aim. Oh, now it worked. Oh, okay. So I think it it's not attaching it to the specific variable because you saw that when we created it, it okay. So let me redo it here. So on overlap, so there, right? You see it says one. Oh, okay. Actually, I think I may know. But it keeps saying one. So let me shoot somebody. Okay, and then let's do it again. Okay. So actually I think what may be happening is let's go here. Um what did What did I forget to do? And actually, I don't think we actually added this in the original game. Yeah. Don't actually need that because this is going to. Oh no, actually no, Gerard, you're right. Okay, so there's two ways to think about. So there's actually two things happening. First off, is the health exactly equal to 0? Well, possibly. Okay, but what happens if for some reason the health is so what I should have done here is put this in, made this greater than 0, take 1 away, and immediately destroy it. Okay, so the difference here is that let's say that okay, and there's a second thing going on, which is, do I ever destroy the projectile? I never did, right? So what happens if the projectile overlaps with the enemy? It overlaps, deduct a health point. It still overlaps, deduct another health point. And that's going to continue going until, well, basically until the enemy gets destroyed, right? So it appears to us that it's insta-killed, but it really wasn't. It was just being hit over and over again. Okay, so what else should I add here to my statement? I should destroy the sprite. Okay, now why did I put that outside of the if statement rather than inside? Why was that maybe a good idea? Yeah, exactly. The enemy's health does not determine whether or not the projectile should be destroyed. What determines the projectile being destroyed is if it hits an enemy. Okay. And so since we're within an overlap with the enemy piece of code, right, I want the sprite or the projectile destruction to happen always. Now, I guess second question is, why did I put this after the if conditional rather than before the if conditional? I probably could have put it in either place, but um, why might it be good to put it after rather than before? I think in this particular case it wouldn't have mattered, but well, what about like if the by destroying it, I make it so that the overlap is no longer happening, kind of thing. So yeah, okay. So now let's test this again and see if. All right, well that was stupid. Okay, so 3. Well, still insta-killing. Okay, so that clearly isn't working. Did we miss something else here? Oh no, wait, we did destroy the sprite. It's right there. Um, well, then I'm not sure what we're messing up then. All right, let me move this because that was sort of superfluous. Oh, because I'm an idiot. This should actually be equal to. So by making this greater than 0, when did this trigger? Yeah, which 3 is last time I checked above 0. So we programmed it to insta kill with me being a moron. Okay, so what should we make this? Yeah, equal to 0, or in this case, I'll actually make it equal to 1, because well, actually, no. Let's put it back the way we had it. Okay, so sorry. This is one thing that's sort of annoying about working with blocks is the dragging them around. Okay. All right. So now it should be okay because we've done two things, right? We've made sure that we destroy the other sprite regardless, okay, which keeps overlaps from stacking on top of each other. And we deduct 1 from the health always, and if the health hits 0, then we destroy it. Okay, so let's try it one more time. Okay, so 3, and now, all right, so I'm going to make one minor change here. Let me stop this. When they're going too fast, so let me change the VY to like 5 so that they move really slow, just to make it easier to test. All right, so 1, 2, 3, okay, and then it died. 1, 2, 3, and it died. Okay, so that's working. Sure.
Now, if the enemy were to hit you like that, we talked about before, since the projectile wasn't destroyed, it looked like it was insta-killing.
Right.
Would you basically get insta-killed because it'd be overlapping you several times?
No, because right now we have it that when you overlap the enemy, it insta kills the enemy. Right. So what we would need to do here is make the same sort of modification to say always deduct 1 from the player's life. Okay. I mean, unless you're invincible, obviously. But if you overlap and the sprites, the others, the enemy's health is deduct 1 from the enemy's health and deduct 1 from your health, and only destroy the enemy if its health hits 0. Right. So we would have to modify this little piece sort of similarly to how we did the projectile overlap. Okay. So yeah, good question. Other questions on this? Let me scroll back over so you guys can see it. No? On that? From a game design standpoint, maybe one other thing I'll point out is does the player get a point if they destroy an enemy by touching it? Does that make sense? Head shaking in every possible direction. Like, does it make sense from the code that it happens in one case but not the other? Right? From a game design standpoint, is that a good or a bad thing? I think it's a good thing, right? Because we're punishing the player by taking away a health point, right? We don't want the player to run into an enemy to destroy them. We want them to shoot it. Okay. Now that though is a game design decision, which once you make that decision, then the programming sort of goes with it. Um, and you know, I think that makes sense from a game design decision, but I don't know. Maybe you disagree. Okay. So good. Now, just to well, yeah. Okay. I think that's good. Okay, so any other questions about this projectile data, or not projectile data, the attaching data to a specific sprite? Okay, you can do this obviously for every sprite, and each type of sprite could have its own sort of categories of variables. Um, so if you had like a boss enemy, somebody mentioned, you could have boss health that's separate from enemy health or whatever, right? Or you could also have different projectile types, right? And you could code these as like projectile type 1, 2, 3, whatever, just for quick reference. But you could, imagine that there's like you get a better projectile that does 2 damage rather than 1 damage or something, right? In which case, what would have to be true here, this -1 might need to be a variable, okay, based on what the damage value that your projectile does. And then just to cover our butts, I would change this equal to less than or equal, okay, because what happens if you later program a power-up that allows you to do 2 damage and the enemy starts with 3 damage, so you shoot it, it now has 1 health, you shoot it again, now what's its health? Which is not equal to 0, so it wouldn't get destroyed. Okay, so by making that less than or equal to 0, we catch that case where we've been morons. Okay, the other potential reason to use less than or equal to rather than just equal is so in our case here, the numbers are all whole numbers, but they obviously don't have to be. One could imagine having half health points or something. And the thing about the way computers do arithmetic is it sort of matches the way that you and I would do arithmetic on paper, but not exactly. Okay, and so this may actually kind of blow y'all's minds. What's 1/10 plus 2/10? But on a computer, it's not exactly equal to 3/10. Okay, if you do it as a floating point numbers. So the precision that you get, now it might be like differ from 1/10 and the like 7th or 20th decimal place or something. Okay, but the only numbers that you can exactly express in computer arithmetic are things that are powers of 2 or sums of things that are power of 2. Okay, why power of 2? Because everything's in binary. Okay, whereas our arithmetic system is base 10 rather than base 2. Now, if you use lots and lots of bits to store the data, then that loss of precision is not really noticeable. Okay, but it is present, and you have to be kind of cognizant of that. Right, so I changed that to less than or equal to, just to cover our butts. Okay, good. So, any other questions? Fragen? No? Okay, cool. So let's get out of this. And we started kind of talking about the next thing, which we'll go through a little bit together, which is the platformer. Where was it? Not Galaga. No, not Sidescroller. Where was it? Yeah. Oh, that's right. Okay, that's the finished product. That's not what I wanted. I'm sorry. Okay, so we want let's see. So we really can do either way. We can either do the monkey or the maze. The so we'll just do the monkey one for sake of demonstration. Okay, to make basically a side scroller sort of Mario style. So the only difference between a Mario style thing and a Zelda style thing is the player movement. You don't have gravity with the Zelda style thing because you can move freely in any of the 4 directions. Whereas from a side scroller, you can only move left and right, and if you jump, then you come back down. Okay, so there's not a whole lot of difference there. But so let's just start the beginning one here. Okay, and talk about the movement controls, gravity, and so on. Okay, so now what they have done for us is they've already loaded the background image and also the tile map. Okay, so let me blow this up just so that we can see the thing. So we see a background image. Do you see any tiles? Not yet. Okay, and the reason for that is so we do have a tile map which we can click on. Okay, but we haven't defined basically where we are in the tile map world, so it doesn't know how to map it onto the screen yet. Okay, but we've got what looks like, okay, a great level, and we'll have our player spawn someplace and then move around. And I think we talked about this a little bit last time. What's the difference? You see how some of these blocks are kind of highlighted pink, right? So what's the highlighting do? Yeah, it makes them solid. Okay, and that of course can be turned on and off on a per tile basis by specifying the coordinates of the tile you want to modify. Um, but we'll leave that alone for now. Okay, and so I want to go to this. Okay, so we've got that stuff already set up. Okay, so we need to create our player sprite. Okay, so that's sort of the usual thing. Let's do this. Okay, and then let's choose the monkey. Okay, great. So we've got that. Okay, so far that's just like before. And then we also need to set up the movement. So move my sprite with buttons. Okay. Now, if you hit the plus here, as we saw in the other game, we have control for Vx and Vy. Now, on a side scroller, what do we want Vy to be? Yeah, because hitting the up button shouldn't move the player up. Okay. If we were on like a Zelda type game or an overworld where we wanted to move in any potential directions, we would set Vy to something. Okay, whatever we wanted. Okay, so now that said, we also will want the player to be able to jump, but we'll do that with like what the A button maybe, and so that'll be sort of a separate thing. Okay, good. All right, so that's good. And then let's try it out real quick. And okay, so what happens here is so the tile map is there. Okay, but we have just spawned probably at tile 00, which if we look at our tile map, what's up in the top left-hand corner? Do we see any tiles? No. Okay, so it doesn't look like the tile map is there, even though it is. This also illustrates that you can have both a background and a tile map. And if you think about a Mario game, that makes sense, right? Where the tile map scrolls, but the world in the background doesn't, and that gives you sort of an illusion of like distance. Now, in something like a Zelda type game, so you see how we have a bunch of empty tiles? In like a map, an overworld map, we would have no empty tiles. Okay, just some of them would be solid, others wouldn't. Okay, okay. So, but why does our monkey just float there? Yeah, there's no gravity. Okay, so we need to set gravity. Okay, and we're going to set my sprite x to 0. Okay, that just specifies that could specify where the thing starts, but we don't care about that. What we do care about is setting the acceleration. Okay, so here are the built-in variables for that are attached to any sprite that you can use. Anything beyond those, you would need to use the sprite extensions that we looked at a minute ago. Okay, so what do we got? X and Y, Vx and Vy, Ax and Ay, Fx and Fy. This is kind of cool. You can actually add friction to or low friction. Okay, so what would be in Mario a good example of where you might want to mess with the friction? Yeah. Okay. Also, yeah, so running and the skidding. Okay, what else? Yeah, the ice levels, right? Where you could turn the friction way down on those, and so Mario would kind of slide along it. Whereas if you were on um, regular blocks, then you'd want the friction to be higher. Yes, you could, which is we'd have to experiment with doing like wall jumps and stuff like that. But theoretically, yeah, you could. Okay, or make it so that if you're sliding along a wall, it maybe has a higher friction than obviously just free fall, so that you could slowly slide rather than falling super quickly. Any other ideas for the friction? No? Okay. But in this case, what do we want to do? We want to change the y acceleration to something. Okay. And what this number is, they suggest 500. Now, that may seem kind of like a big number. All right. But let's sort of put this in context. What is this 500? What are the units of this 500? Well, not quite pixels per second, pixels per square second. Okay. And so if I am going 0 pixels per second, after 1 second under this acceleration, what should my vertical velocity be? 500. After 2 seconds, what should it be? 1,000. It stacks, right? Those of you who have taken calculus, yeah, it was a long time ago, man. Yeah, but hey, and some of you, I can't believe it was. Remember fall of 2019, Mr. Ukulele, when the world was normal? No masks. We could, we had Uno cards and the cups, and I made you draw four a whole bunch of times, and mhm. So in his calculus class, I used Uno cards to randomly assign them to uh, little small groups. You just found whichever number or color or whatever matched. And then I kept a draw four card just in case anybody got uppity during class. So, yeah, we did actually. Yeah, for legitimate reasons. So rather than just me trolling you. So, yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So 500. Now that number can be negative. What would it mean if this number were negative? Yeah, gravity would be pulling you upwards instead of downwards, which I don't know, maybe you could make like an upside down world or something. Uh, right? There, the gravity could go left or right. That'd be a little weird, but you could do it. Um, and if you wanted to really mess with people's heads, you could make gravity go sort of diagonal. Um, yeah. Okay. So, so anybody remember Tyler Ramsey? Well, he's on the Twitch stream right now, and he wants us to quiet down because he's trying to work and play Fortnite. Where is the Fortnite? So, uh, all right. So let's test out the gravity and make sure that it actually works correctly. Where's my mouse? There we go. And okay, here's the other thing, right? Which is, so you noticed on the simulator, what happened to the monkey? He just disappeared. And the reason is because when you use a tile map, okay, the or in any, well, really in any game, there's also a camera. Okay. In the space shooter, we didn't have to worry about this because the camera was fixed on a fixed viewing window, and our player could move around within that window, and the enemies moved through that. But the position of the camera, because we weren't using a tile map, was fixed. Okay. So what we have to do is we have to attach the camera to follow the sprite, our player, around. Okay. And then if we go back over to the thing, okay, so now if I reset it, right, we spawned up there in the high up in the tile map, and then we fell to hit this block, and okay, now we're hitting this block. Okay, and then okay, so now what's the problem? I can't jump, so I'm stuck for now. Okay. All right. So does the camera bit make sense? Yeah. Now, the nice thing about the camera is that this block, right now, we've got it in the on start, but you can actually attach the camera to other objects and switch back and forth between who they're attached to. Why would that maybe be a good thing or useful thing? Okay. Yeah, you can switch from one character to the other, or like, let's say you're making like a cutscene kind of thing, or like, oh, I don't know, maybe in some of the Mario games, like the game sort of pauses, the camera scrolls over, and you see Bowser running off with the Princess Peach, and then the camera scrolls back, and then reattaches to your character, and then you can play the game, right? You could do stuff sort of like that, and um, yeah, but okay, we'll leave it there for now. Um, and yeah, respectfully, you too, Tyler. Okay, so what else? We've got the camera movement, and we can see the monkey. And of course, what's the last thing we need to do for now? Gravity. Okay, so or not gravity, the jumping. Okay, so on A button pressed. Okay, and we'll make this. We can make it whatever button we want, right? So the up button is what they suggest. Okay, and then make my sprite gravity jump. Okay. Um, great. And okay, so let's test that out and make sure it works. Okay, so now we can jump around. That's kind of cool. Now, this gravity jump operation is one that they've added since the last time I played with this. Um, what's maybe the downside of using it? Let's go back and look at it. Exactly. Doesn't give us any ability to modify how the jumping happens. Okay. Now let's just look at this, and I can we can modify this. So instead of using the gravity jump function, what I can actually do is set my vertical y velocity to something. Okay. So I've set here minus 100. Okay, which notice that I do jump, but not as much. If I tweak that number, then I can adjust the power at which I can jump. All right, now what's the downside of what I just did? Right, if I mash the up button, what does it do? Yeah, so I can jump in midair. Do we want that? Okay, maybe a double jump, right? But so what would I need to do a double jump? I'd have to do something like, I'd have to make a variable that's like, am I currently jumping? Yes or no. If so, allow one more jump, but no more. And then reset everything when I hit zero, hit back to the ground or something. Okay, or a timer. Okay, so yeah, so we can adjust the amount of the jump. I just picked minus 100 here, kind of arbitrarily, which isn't probably enough in this instance, but yeah, we could do that. All right, so just for the sake of continuing, let's put it back the way we had it with the gravity jump. And then, of course, knowing that we can always come back later um, and tweak it. Okay. All right, and I think that's it for this tutorial. So, okay, great. Um, so now let's go on to the next one, and let's keep our code and go from there. Okay, so what what else do we want to have happen in a platformer, right? So if we just think about Mario, and you can kind of see in the preview here, what happens if you touch these flowers? You die, okay? And you know, in Mario, that'd be like falling in the pit, or your little Mario, and you run into an enemy, and then you have to play the level again, okay? So then the other thing is, you see there's those little orbs, okay, that perhaps we want to collect those kind of like coins or something. So let's go through this. All right, so blah, blah, blah. Okay, so the on sprite overlap at location. So this is under the scene thing, okay, because it goes with the tile map. And the way this particular block works is it's kind of like the on overlap where two sprites overlap, okay? Um, and obviously we want the player to be the one thing. And then what I can do is I can specify, okay, for example, these are the flowers, okay, the poison flowers. And then you see where it's got this location? That location is also a placeholder. Okay, so what I could do is say, anytime you overlap with a poison flower, I want you to die or whatever. Okay, but I could maybe also say, well, create like an explosion, but only at the spot that you overlapped with the thing. Okay, so this location thing will allow me to get to that data. Okay, and then if we want to make the player lose, the instant way to do this is game over lose, and then we can make it with um, you know, whatever effect just to make it fun. All right, so let's test that real quick. And um, right, okay, so we lost. That sucks. And then we come over here, and we lost again. Okay, so does that make sense? Now, if we wanted to do a more true Mario style game, we would not want to do this instant lose when you die, right? We'd want to do something where like you lose a life and you restart the level and that sort of thing. Okay. For now, obviously, we'll just run with it, but you guys get the idea, hopefully. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So let's continue. Let's see. We've got losing. Try it again. All right. We need to make it so that it wins. Um, and so we're going to make a sort of another one of these. There's like a treasure chest in the at the end of the level. Okay. So it's chest one, that one, and then we'll make the player win. Okay, so we just changed that to win. All right, and if we were to continue jumping over to towards the right of the tile map, there's a treasure chest over there, and so we could win. Okay, great. But that's sort of the same idea, right? So nothing too exciting there. Okay, and um, it's impossible to win because we can't get over the pits. How do we get over the pits? Um, now we're going to do the overlap. Okay, so the orange tiles, right? So let's do the same sort of thing. On sprite overlap this orange thing at location, change score by 1. Okay. All right. So what's going to be the problem with this if we start playing it? So let me go into the game. Yeah. Yeah. So you see how like my score is just going up infinitely much? Okay. Why is that happening? Yeah, because I'm continually touching that tile that's got the little orange thing on it. So I need to remove that object. Now it's not a sprite, so I can't destroy it like I would have in the space shooter. I need to do something slightly different. Okay, but does it make sense what the issue is? Okay. All right. So how are we going to fix that? Okay. we're going to, so in the scene, we can set the tile at a specific location to a specific thing, okay? And if we want to replace, so if we want to make it look like the object has been collected, then what do we want to do? What do we want to replace the orange thing with? Just a blank, right? Which is the little gray and white checkered thing that has nothing in it, okay? And then where do we want to replace it? The specific location of the particular orange thing we just touched. And so what I'm going to do is this is going to get replaced with this location object, the placeholder. Okay, in the same way that we use the on overlap, the sprite and other sprite as the placeholders for the overlap events between sprites, we're sort of doing the same thing here, except it's a location that we care about now. Okay, so does that make sense? Yeah? Okay, so if I just plop this guy here, oops, and there we go. Sometimes you have to kind of get it in just the right spot before it'll snap in. Okay, so once we do that, it no longer will have, it no longer will give us infinitely many things, because the second we touch it, it'll give us a point, but then make the tile disappear, basically. All right, so let's test it and make sure that it works. And looks good to me. Right, and then we die. Okay, good. All right, so that's not too hard. And you can, of course, change the tiles to other actual things that actually look like something. So, for example, let's say that we had like the treasure chest. We could have it when you touch it, it replaces it with an open treasure chest, and you get like coins or something, right? So the tile is still there. Um, it just looks different. Okay. Similarly, you can turn off or on the solidity of a tile uh, based on its coordinates. Okay, so you could use that for things like doors or or I guess maybe like if you wanted to do like a pipe thing, like in Mario, where it looks like Mario is going down the pipe, you'd have to kind of temporarily turn it off. You could do something like that. Um, Yeah, okay. So good. Continuing. What else do we have? We're done. Okay. So you guys kind of get the idea? All right. So what do I want you to do before Thursday? Finish it. Okay. And we'll sort of continue from there. And in particular, the other thing I'd kind of like you to sort of think about as you're finishing it, okay, like we did with the space shooter, right? You're going to come up with other ideas to add. Okay, so we'll basically do the exact same thing we did with the space shooter. Finish this and also think of something to add and then add it. Okay, and upload that to Canvas just like you did with the space shooter thing. Um, okay, so good. And then kind of looking a little bit long term here, we're pretty much to the point where we've got most of the blocks and the functionality that this particular engine can give us. The major pieces, right? So the details of like some of these extensions or whatever are going to depend on what you're interested in doing. And so the next thing we want to do is start to pull the training wheels off and start thinking about bigger projects. Okay. All right. So any questions, preguntas, fragens? No. All right. Well, I think that's good for today. So I'll see you guys on Thursday.